Orcs. Warhammer 40k Orcs. These alien creatures in the world of the 41st millennium are often referred to as the Green Tide, due to how they will swarm planets in mass, clambering over one another almost in a frenzied attempt just to make it to a battle. You see, the Orcs don't just like war.
I love.
So the question comes, what do the boys get up to when there's no one else left to fight? Simple. They fight amongst themselves. And that infighting brings us to the topic of today's video. Speed Freaks. Speed Freaks is a game.
Well, no shit.
Sharing its name with the Warhammer 40k tabletop side game that came out in 2018, I remember when this game came out. I was 16 and I loved it. Sadly, I never owned it, as being a broke sixth form student, I didn't really have the money to buy the box set. But I did buy a squig buggy that I own to this day. But I remember that when playing the tabletop game in store, I had an idea, a revelation. Wouldn't it be cool if there was an actual orc racing game? Well, here we are now. Now, before we discuss the game here, I must disclose that this game is an open alpha at this moment in time. And so things, and by things I mean everythings, can be subject to change. But for the 5 of you that are here to simply hear my opinion, let's actually get round to talking about the game. Speed Freaks is a car combat game like Twisted Metal and Vigilante 8, set in the Warhammer 40k universe, where you play as the best faction in 40k, the Orcs. The only game mode available currently is Death Rally, being an objective-based game mode where players battle against each other in 2 teams fighting to the death to secure control over a point. There are many different vehicles, each with their own unique weapons, abilities, speed, and health. Now, with the basic gameplay explanations and the introduction out of the way, let's get on to the opinion / feedback proportion of this video. Caged element. You wanted feedback.
The new GITZ is gonna get feedback. Okay lads, let's start with the gameplay.
Okay, as much as I love doing that voice, I'm gonna save that for specific things. This game's gameplay is great. It's chaotic, with vehicles flying all over the place, gunfire spraying out everywhere, and the speed, well, it's very, very fast. The combat itself, for the most part, is fun and engaging, with each different weapon having a lot of weight behind them and strength that you can see as well as feel and hear when firing, like with the claw on the trike or the cannon on the loot wagon. With all of these aspects combined, the devs have done a fantastic job at simulating the feeling of being an orc and the sheer carnage that comes with being one.
Now what about them visuals?
Well, the environments look great, most of them being desolate wastelands ravaged by the war and infighting of the orcs. The vehicles and their designs are beautiful. I don't know how, but I imagine GW has provided the devs with scans of their tabletop versions of the models to place them into the game, and I love this. As someone who owns versions of these vehicles themselves, being able to use them and see them locked in combat makes me so happy. And I just love the little things, as well as the look of the warp lightning all over the dragster, the grot captain in the battle wagon, and of course, the grot riding the rocket. Yippee! And all of these things just add to the game's personality and style. And I love all of them because it is the most orcish style I have seen from a GW project in a while. Now, unfortunately, I wish I had more to talk about, but sadly, due to this game being an alpha, and there only really being so much content, there's not too much else to discuss, which unfortunately leads me to jump straight into the next section, which is...
No. Mm-mm. No. Hell no!
Now, I won't be very harsh on this game, as I understand it's very early days for this project, and so this is just very much a way of handing over what they have to their audience and letting them play with it and taking on feedback from us. And of course, feedback comes in many forms, that including criticism. So, enough beating around the bush, but let's get to it. Glitches, oh boy. I mean, for me, mostly this has been in the visual department, these being missing textures or assets completely going off the rails and stretching themselves all towards the sky, like the planet I'm on is having a fucking rapture.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that?
As for the gameplay, there are some things that I feel need addressing. These are some things in the game which I feel lack weight or explanation. The biggest being the WAR meter and its lack of impact. Now, I'm not saying the effect of the meter isn't felt, but I had a hard time knowing when it was active, let alone what it did at first. This is due to there not being much of an indication as to when your WAR is active. Now, going off track here, orc wars are usually when a large warband of orcs roar out across a battlefield. Now, if an opposing army is to hear this, then they know they're truly in for a good crumpin. And in Speed Freaks, war is just a small meter that when filled increases your firing rate by 33%, as well as having you take 33% less damage. This doesn't make sense to me from a character standpoint or lore. You see, orcs work under a literal mob mentality. When a war is called on tabletop, it affects the whole army, not just a single orc. So having it tied to one player doesn't quite work. I suggest I would probably replace its name and save the war for a team-based mechanic instead. Maybe a team-wide buff given out by the speed boss, the person who's scoring the highest in the team, giving the other players a reason to stick by their speed boss, as well as the opponents an opportunity to target them, kind of forcing teams to play off each other, as well as prioritize targeting instead of it just being a frenzy. But I'm not a game designer, so what do I know? Another thing is the balance. Some vehicles in this game feel great, powerful, and fill their roles extremely well. Others in comparison don't. Kind of just feel like they get bullied by the other main characters that deal damage. And the main two that sit in this ballpark in my mind are the War Trike and the Squig Buggy. Now, the Trike is an absolute menace on the battlefield. Fast attacking, super strong melee damage, and, chasing down mechanics, allowing for a perfect assassination attempt, which is its job. When you pick your target and chase them down and crump them with your claw, it's an extremely effective 1-2 combo of grapple, chase, and slash. But the problem comes in how easy it is for the Trike to do so in terms of how risk-free it is to use, for the most part. You see, the Trike works super effectively against most of the normal-sized vehicles, but when fighting tanks, it dies for the most part. This is balanced well, meaning the Trike won't solo a team as long as the team in question has one or two beefier players who keep an eye out and try to focus it down when it begins to pick on the Squig Buggy, the game's main support unit. That would be the case if the Trike didn't have a little too much health to survive these encounters, and get away safely for the most part, making it easy for it to drive up into a group of multiple enemies and survive long enough to crump most of them, in quick succession I might add. I propose maybe nerfing its health values, but maybe increasing its mobility options by lowering the dash cooldown on the vehicle specifically, or maybe I'd say buffing the acceleration as not buffing the speed, because I don't want something that's too fast to hit. But instead, if it bumps into something it's attacking, it can pull away quickly as to not get ganked upon when getting stuck in. Punishing this thing should come from a good player's aim or coordinated play, being able to notice when a trike is going in and countering accordingly. Although, asking a bunch of orcs to strategize would be considered heresy in some cases. As for the Swig buggy, I feel its role as a support is a good idea, but even as a support, its ability to defend itself is just lacking heavily. I know it should focus more on healing, but in a game such as this where you have to constantly be on the move, it's hard to keep track of your supports all the time, and so giving them a little bit more survivability would be nice. A suggestion I would be making here is to give the Squig buggy back its mind from tabletop. Give it a large trigger radius and huge damage, but only on it. So give it a large damage radius, but massive damage fall off accordingly. So it's not easy for the buggy just to farm kills with it. And not forgetting to give it an arm time. You don't want it dropping an insta-kill behind it so it can kill whatever's chasing it instantly. Now, when being chased, the buggy can use it to defend itself, but not outright just straight up kill the person chasing it, which forces this kind of mind game, which is always fun, but also gives it a simple way to help deny objectives, giving it still its supporting role, but just another kind of support, because we don't know when we're going to get another support vehicle or any other vehicles just yet. I would also give the mine a glowing effect, so it's somewhat easy to spot, allowing players to shoot at it and blow it up, meaning they can damage the enemies around it. This would then create fun mind games for the buggy and those it's using the mine against. I know this idea is out there, but it's just food for thought for the devs to take on board. And one more thing is, I don't know if this was an issue for me specifically, but the game's netcode itself never really felt stable at times. Now, I'm not claiming to have a perfect Wi-Fi connection, but I know that my connection is far from weak, and even with my pin would start freaking out and sit above 120, whereas for games such as Dota and DBD, I could hold a solid 50 respectively at the same times of day and moments after each other. Now, before I bring this video to conclusions, I would like to add a bonus segment to the game as a way of putting some ideas forward. So, here it is. Idea number 1, customization options. A big part of Warhammer 40k, and especially the orcs, are the customization possibilities, with all the different clans and just all the different paints in general. Now at this point we know the game is going to be free to play, so I imagine customization will be the way the developers will choose to monetize the game. Okay, that's fine. All I ask you guys, and I ask this personally, please do not lock the clan paints behind paywalls. Okay, fine. Skins are fine, car parts fine, weapon swaps sure, whatever, as long as none of them go pay to win. But please do not lock the orc clan paints behind a paywall. More specifically, the original orc clan ones. These being the Bad Moons, the Goths, the Evil Sons, the Freebooters, Snake Bites, and of course the Death Skulls. If you want to introduce other funky different paints afterwards behind a battle pass or a paywall, sure, but at least let the community have the clans in the base game. Number 2, monetization. I know that given the game being free to play, monetization will be a big role in this game's lifespan and treatment. So if you're looking for inspiration, why not look at CTR? I'd understand that maybe you'd have to lock the battle pass behind the paywall, or even a premium route behind it, but the rotating shop and grindable currency, which I hope will be teeth, wink wink, could be a good sign that you're willing to reward dedicated players for their time and putting effort into the game, which brings me on to my next point. 3. Progression. This is a personal point, as if a game doesn't have a good sense of rewarding progression, then it tends to fall off with me in interest. And so I hope going forward this game can find a good way in which to implement that. Something I've always enjoyed is called the Call of Duty camo system. No, not that one. Get that shit out of here. More like the old days, something along the lines of Black Ops 2, where simply achieving kills of the weapon, although that was headshots or one-shots, you would gain commons as rewards for your dedicated skills. Common camos, that is. In using that weapon and being more prolific with it, then eventually you'd move on to the specific challenges dedicated to those weapons. Speed Freaks could do the same as a way of teaching players about the strengths of weapons, say like achieve 5 long-range kills with the shock attack rifle on the dragster, or crump 5 enemies with your claw after grappling onto them. These would also encourage people to try out new vehicles. If you implemented rewards for achieving all camos on vehicles, such as something like a dark matter or diamond, this doesn't have to be exactly the same. You could come up with your own cool stuff like warpstone. Like, imagine the possibilities, guys. But it would push other players to use all the different vehicles. Number 4, more options. Right now in the game, there is no way to change your key bindings that I'm aware of. If I am wrong, please do be gentle in the comments with me about it. This needs to be added, as I feel that allowing players to change their keys in a way that is the most accessible for them is the best way to go. That way no one can complain and everybody can play in a way that's comfortable for them. Could we maybe get an orc mode? Please, just an orc mode. Change all the grammar in the titles to orc stuff, as well as any voices to orc stuff. Just everything, just orc it all. And for those that don't, it's a toggleable mode. You can just turn it off, so everybody wins, especially me. I'd love that, please, devs, just hear me out. This devs, please. And one more thing, Jesus Christ, almost forgot this. Can we talk about the boosting mechanic, like pressing F? I don't know, I just need a little more feedback on it. Like, that would be great. Although this should have been in the criticism part, I'm only remembering this now as a tidbit on the end, so I apologise. Is the boost used for damage, or is it simply for dodging? Because I think it could be cool if certain vehicles had certain melee damages. Like on the Squig Buggy, it has the saw blades on the side, and the Dragster has the blades on the front, and the Trike already has a melee weapon, so it doesn't really need any melee weapons. But like, these don't have to be like as big damage as the Power Claw, but something along the lines of extra chip damage, or like sustained damage if you keep it pressed up against an enemy. Something like that would be cool. And it would also give the boost more aggro potential, that way giving it more uses on more characters besides just dodging. So, with all this said and done, what do I think of Speed Freaks? Well, I don't know if you can tell from how I treated this game, or the title of this video, but I see potential in this game. I see potential within its community. So I look forward to what Speed Freaks has to offer in the future. As for now, I feel about its current state, I think it's incredibly fun. And I do think that if you have a PC, then you should go install it right now. No, seriously, what are you waiting for? Get on in now.
Listen here, you get on Speed Freaks. Let's go find the devs and let's crump them. This has been the Ginger Gamer, and let's start the war!